Welcome in, everybody, to this edition of Coffee and Sports here at Illinois Media School for Sportstown, Chicago. My name is Andrew Scheid. With me, of course, is Matt Donnelly behind the board. We're here today, and we've kind of been gone for a whole week. We haven't really done a show since the Super Bowl. So now we finally get to recap that Super Bowl, and I'm really excited. Even though some people might have said this was a boring Super Bowl, not a lot took place, but if you're a football purist, this was a fun Super Bowl to watch. I mean, let's be honest. If you like every aspect that comes with the game of football, which I do and a lot of my friends do as well, it was a good game. I liked watching the defensive battle. Would you have liked to see more scoring in a game like this? Yeah, it's the biggest NFL game of the year. You expect to see more scoring, you expect to see all that. But it was just good defense, and not only on Seattle's side of the ball, but New England was playing lockdown defense to keep themselves in it until the very end. Just Drake May could not get himself going, and those X factors we talked about in our last show, it's Stephon Diggs and guys like that for New England just couldn't get themselves going as well. And I've talked about this on other shows I'm a part of and other networks I'm a part of. I feel like in the championship round for the AFC, that weather really saved New England's butt. And I think it proved that point in the Super Bowl where they just went and got demolished by the Seahawks because, let's be honest, the game was a lot farther apart than that 29-19 score, 29-13 score, I think it was. But the biggest part of it is the pressures, in my opinion, on Drake May. He was sacked, I think it was like 8 times off of 43 pressures, which in a Super Bowl, that's not on your quarterback. That's on your offensive line not doing their job. And it's a big part of that. So, takeaways from the Super Bowl for me was a great defensive battle. It was great to watch if you're a football purist. Shout out to the Seattle Seahawks and Sam Darnold finally getting his Lombardi trophy and his Super Bowl ring. He's been in this league a while. He's kind of been that journeyman that has always gotten right in front of the precipice, but couldn't get over it. And, just all the, celebration in the world goes out to Seattle. And I was able to catch little snippets of their Super Bowl parade, which looks like they were having a great time out there in Seattle. They were getting their crowds all in it. But one thing I want to talk about when it comes to the Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl is their MVP. And a lot of people got upset at the Super Bowl MVP and thought it should have gone to some other people. Here's what I like about Walker, and the reason why he got that MVP, in my opinion, is when you're playing football, in order to play offense, you have to be able to think like a defensive player and vice versa. And I think that's what Walker is able to do better than a lot of other people is think like that defensive player. And we saw in one play in that game where he's literally guiding defensive tackles with his eyes. And that's not an easy thing to do for an offensive player. I'm very excited to see. Now, here's the big question for Seattle is can you maintain it? Because we saw it this year with the Philadelphia Eagles, came off that Super Bowl win. It just completely fell apart. I'm not exactly sure what the problem is in Philadelphia, but I hope that Seattle can just keep this team together or some semblance of this team together. Because Sam Darnold, in my opinion, had one of the best years of his career this past season. And if he can continue to keep that going, do I feel there's another ring in Sam Darnold's future? There might be. It all depends on the teams that are put behind him and the coaches and everything like that. But Sam Darnold is not, he's not an Aaron Rodgers. He's not a Joe Flacco. He's not out of this league. He's not done by any stretch of the imagination. But like I said, the big thing is can Seattle maintain this dominance? And can they become like a Kansas City Chiefs we've saw in the past 5 years, where you had a repeat and almost a three-peat in terms of Kansas City, but is Seattle that type of team? And Matt, what do you think about everything? I've kind of been still in the show, but what do you think about everything I've said?
Yeah, so when it goes to Kenneth Walker, like you were talking about earlier, I thought it was a great decision to give him the Super Bowl MVP. Ultimately, when you look at how the game was curated from the Seahawks offensive perspective early, they weren't getting it to JSN early. They were getting it to Cooper Cup, which was their, one of their primary offensive targets. But Kenneth Walker, he really established the run game, which I think set the Seahawks up in a pretty good position going forward. Um, and so when you look at what his contributions were to the game with the long runs, with really grinding it out and getting some of those really key offensive plays for the Seahawks, because the defense really dominated. Honestly, at the end of the day, if you had to give the MVP to one person, I'd give it to Kenneth Walker. I think ultimately the award should have gone to the Seahawks defense. You can't really give it to an entire unit, but at the same time, I think Walker was a pretty good option there.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to ask you, because I thought this too, like up like the first whole half of the game. Did you honestly think that kicker might end up being the MVP of a Super Bowl? Because
Well,
that was in the back of my head for a while there.
yeah, I mean, I was looking at some prop bets beforehand, and one of them was odds that the kicker, punter, special team, or whatever would win the MVP, and I was like, yeah, right. I wonder how many people are actually going to put money on this that they could win. A kicker could win the MVP. Yeah. Well, I mean, if it would have come down to it, yeah, if it would have come down to it, this was a much more lopsided game for sure. I think if he had his production, somehow the Patriots come back, and then you need him to kick that game-winning field goal. I don't. I think he just might. I think he just might at that point. But yeah, it's kind of crazy that toward the end of the game, it was thinking, big potential for the kicker to actually win it there.
One thing I want to ask you is, I've kind of already said my opinion. I think the weather kind of saved Drake May in the championship game. What did you see out of Drake May in the Super Bowl that just made him not look like himself?
Well, I don't know if he's seen quite as good of a defense as the Seahawks all year. I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later as well, but the Patriots had the worst strength of schedule in all of the NFL. They were running 32 out of 32, and they definitely had not seen a defense as prevalent as this. So I agree that in the championship game against Denver, the weather definitely played a factor. But I think just an all around unit, I don't think they've seen as good as the Seattle defense the entire season. And on the biggest stage, the age and everything probably has something to do with it, but just the pressure that was applied to him, I think that was just way too overwhelming for his level of development in the NFL so far.
And to me, that the pressure's on a quarterback. That isn't on your quarterback. That's on your offensive line to a point. Yes, Drake made, there were a couple times he could have stepped out of the pocket to escape where he didn't. And I was kind of looking at like, you know how to escape the pocket. Why are you just standing here? I said that a couple times. But also when you get pressured like over 40 times in a game, that's on your offensive line at that point. Do you agree, Matt?
Yeah, and I think being a young player, he got sacked 6 times in this game. I think going up against this awesome Seattle defense, I think any quarterback is getting sacked at least a couple times. But I think there were definitely a few instances where he stayed in a little bit longer than he should have, or had an opportunity to get the ball out a little sooner, and he just ended up eating the sack. So yeah, it's definitely on the line for sure, but I think there's definitely blame to be given to Drake May's inexperience in these type of games as well.
All right. Well, I mean, we had some good insights on the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl matchup, and I'm really excited to see what the Seahawks can do going forward. We're gonna take a quick break here in a little bit, but Matt, next we're gonna be talking a little bit about some bowls and some Patrick Williams. Can you kind of tease us what's coming up after the break?
Yeah, so after this, we're going to be talking what is the angle for the Chicago Bulls this year? It seems like they've gotten rid of basically their entire team. And what's it looking like with it looked kind of promising at the beginning of the season. And then now we're here. And just all in all, it's not looking great for the Bulls. So Andrew and I will break that down when we come back.
And welcome back in, everyone, to this edition of Coffee and Sports here at Illinois Media School for Sportstown Chicago. I'm Andrew Scheid, and with me always is Matt Donnelly. And Matt, before we went to break, you kind of teased we'll be talking about the Chicago Bulls, and we both have our opinions on this. But let's start with your opinion on the Bulls' angle this year.
Well, the Bulls should have been doing what they've been doing a long, long time ago. And that's my initial take on it here. And the fact that they've been run so incompetently for so long is just baffling to myself as a Bulls fan. But it shouldn't baffle me too much, quite honestly, because at the end of the day, this is a pretty typical, a pretty regular Chicago move here where you're making so much money. You don't need to be good. You don't need to be competitive. I think for the ownership of the Bulls, they were so content living in that 9-10 playing game. Hey, we get an extra home game each year. That's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. That's basically what they've been living in now, and where they could have gotten to the point where they could have actually gotten some first round picks for these guys. They could have actually done something with developing talent. Now they're getting rid of everybody. These draft picks we were so excited for are gone now. And for what? Nothing. We've basically got what did we get? Collin Sexton. I mean, that's just not very acceptable in my opinion. What do you think, Andrew?
I mean, like you said, I was kind of shocked at the trade deadline. There are a lot of moves I didn't necessarily agree with. There are some I did, like the Luka Doncic trade with Boston. I kind of, after thinking about it for a week, or Luka Vucevic, sorry. Got my guys mixed up after All-Star weekend. But anyway, after that trade, I was kind of like, okay, that was an okay trade because other than being a tall, one of the taller guys on the team, what does he really do? But I kind of got a little upset at the Ayo Dosunmu trade. I feel like that shouldn't have happened. That was one that was like, why? What was the reasoning behind trading him to the Timberwolves? Can someone explain that to me? Because I've been trying to figure that one out. I can understand Vucevic. I can understand Kobe White. Ayo Dosunmu has got me so flummoxed. I still can't wrap my head around that one.
And it was such an unusual trade deadline too, because where you think a team would go out and say, hey, we can be contenders here, we're not that far off. At the end of the day, when you look at it and you say, well, Who are you getting rid of? If you told somebody before the trade deadline, hey, you're getting rid of Kobe, Ayo, Vucevic, you're getting rid of all of these players, you'd say, wow, they must have gotten a haul in return.
Right.
And then you look at who they get.
Yeah.
And they say, well, guess what? You got Colin Sexton. Okay. We got Colin Sexton. Okay, who else? Well, you got Ivy. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. And who else? How many first round picks did we get? Oh, you got a bunch of second round picks.
Yeah.
I mean, just at this point, it's you could have gotten so much, and we talk about this from a past experience as well. You could have gotten so much for DeRozan, Levine. You didn't.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. And if I were the Bulls, and put your own thoughts out there, Matt, I would even try to make the play-in tournament this year. I would try to get myself a better draft spot going into next year. Well, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
And that's what, I don't know if you can see it. We got a graphic up here. They're projected to only win 9 more games so far this season. And that's per ESPN NBA BPI. They've got, I think, 24 wins right now. They're estimated to finish with 33.2 wins. So about 9 more wins by the end of the season. They have not been above 500 since November 24th. And that's really what I want to get at here is the fact that you could have tanked before the year. You could have tanked 2 years ago. But now we're kind of gift wrapping some of these players for other teams and just saying, well, that's just how we're going to go about business now. And honestly, the most inspiring basketball in the Bulls organization, in my opinion, is being played at the G League level with Mac McClung, Yuki, and Ulbrich. Those 3 are way more fun to watch than truly anybody on the Bulls right now. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong here, Andrew, but I'm not getting the most out of watching Pat Williams in the starting 5 night in or night out.
No, and honestly, I feel like we have more fun in Huffman Estates watching Yuki Kalmore and Mac McClung than they do in Chicago at the UC watching Patrick Williams and those guys. I feel like Yuki and Mac McClung bring a lot more energy to the game, and that's something the Bulls are lacking. Other than Colin Sexton getting fined for flipping off the basket in that one game. I mean, that's the only energy I've seen out of the trade deadline from the Bulls. I don't know if you've seen anything else out there.
No,
what shows that they want to win.
I mean, not really. I mean, here's the thing. When we talk in these contexts about teams, especially in the NBA, wanting to win and tanking, look, I mean, if the front office wants to tank, they're going to put out the worst possible product available. And essentially, the players are not going to be the ones that are doing the act of tanking. They've got their own careers to worry about, right? They're not exactly Terry Roziers out there. They're going to be actually putting in some effort, making a valiant effort, the best that they can. But if that's G Leaguers that they're putting out there, that's going to be their way of essentially tanking, I suppose. And maybe they won't even hit that mark. But I don't even think, Andrew, in your opinion, I think Nick's got something here too, but I don't even know if it's a worthwhile effort to tank in the NBA anymore when obviously, in my opinion, the lottery is quite rigged. Example, Cooper Flag. But yeah, let's see it.
Let's see it.
Pull up the schedule and you guys can play. Let's guess the 9 wins from the remaining.
That's a good one. That's a good one right there.
Oh no, Matt. Maybe we should bring Nick in for the last couple segments here.
Do you even see 5? Huh? That's impressive.
I see the 5 games left in this month, and I don't think I can confidently say there's 1 win.
Okay, Andrew, we're gonna go through them here, and I'm gonna read you the opponent. We'll both say win or loss. Okay.
All right.
So right after the break, Toronto. Loss.
I say loss.
Detroit. Loss.
Yeah, loss.
New York. Loss.
Yeah.
That's what I got. Yeah, these are. Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, because I have yet to see what this team can do. This new group of starters, I have yet to see what they can do, and I have yet to see.
I mean, they lost by 20 in Boston.
Do.
They lost by 8 to the Nets.
I mean, could Josh? This is the thing. is Josh Giddey the Luis Robert of the Chicago Bulls? I mean,
he might be at this point, honestly.
That's what I'm starting to think. I've yet to see a full season where Josh Giddey is not injured or down at some point in the season.
Well, here's the tricky thing about your proposition, Nick. The Bulls only beat good teams, and they always lose to bad teams. So when we're looking at these, now they just lose to everybody. But they've lost to the Pacers twice when the Pacers were god awful. They've lost to the Pelicans twice. They've lost to the Horn. They went through a stretch where they lost to the Pelicans, Charlotte, Indiana, Indiana again, Brooklyn, and all of those had less than 10 wins well into the season. But really, when I'm looking at the schedule here, I could see maybe a win against Charlotte, maybe a win against probably Sacramento. There's 2. Going through Indiana. I'll go with Indiana for a win. One of the 2 Washingtons. I'm not confident enough that they'll beat them twice in Washington. So that's 4.
They need one more.
Dallas is probably resting some guys at the end of the year. I could see 5.
Yeah, because I could see a Rusty Cooper Flag and guys like that. So yeah,
that's about it. I only see 5. How many do you see 5 there, Nick?
You gotta add just one stolen game, and I'm not gonna say
a random one, yeah.
Thunder, but maybe the 76ers.
Factor in maybe 1 or at most 2 random wins there. We'll be happy with 30, right, Andrew? 30 wins.
I'll be happy with that. I'll just be ready to get into the next season. But when we come back, we kind of talk on one of my sports here. The professional bowling tour is officially underway for 2026, so we'll be talking that when we come back from this short break. And welcome back in, everybody, to the Coffee and Sports Talk Show. I'm one of your hosts, Andrew Scheid, and with me always is Matt Donnelly, overrunning the board today. Before we left, we teased that we were going to be talking the Professional Bowlers Association Tour 2026 is now officially underway, and I have to say, guys, I'm very excited. For those that don't know, I am a competitive bowler. I will continue to be a competitive bowler as long as my body allows me to. And for those that don't know, bowling is not an easy sport. And I do feel that the PBA, not PBA Professional Basketball Association, but PBA as in Professional Bowlers Association, because those are 2 different things. And like I said, I don't feel the PBA gets a lot of recognition. They just signed a new TV deal with the CW this year. Their first telecast will be on February 22nd. That's this coming Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern for the Players Championship. But what happened this past weekend up in Arlington, Texas at the International Bowling Hall of Fame Museum was a players team captains match between EJ Tackett and my favorite professional bowler Jason Belmonte out of Australia. What this was captains of a telecast that'll be coming up in April, USA versus the World. EJ Tackett will be captain of Team USA and Jason Belmonte will be captain of Team World. Here's the one thing about this match. It just showed that who's going to get first pick in this, who's going to get first pick in match. And it was just a one single game match. But what I liked about this match to kick off the season was they played on lanes that were so old, you did not have electronic pin setters. So you had a pin boy behind the lanes, resetting the pins. EJ Tackett ended up coming away with the win in that game. And here's what I think why. Both EJ Tackett and Jason Belmonte have almost the exact same rev rate when it comes to this game. But Jason Belmonte is getting up there in age. He's been on this tour for over a decade. And he's now leads the PBA in most major titles. He's got 15.
Real quick, Andrew, if you could, you just referenced rev rate. Can you explain to me what that is again?
So rev rate is basically how fast your ball spins down the lane. So when you bowl, your ball is going to spin. We all see the ball spin. And when you curve and hook a ball, you get even more spin. And that's what that rev rate is. And Jason Belmonte and EJ Tackett can throw the ball about 20 miles an hour. So they're going to produce a lot of rev rate with that type of speed. And also that rev rate can also help bounce those pins around too with that ball spin as well. And that's what has made these two guys so dominant on the tour. Jason Belmonte has now been told he is the number one bowler in the PBA in the past 25 years. So when you think of the PBA only being in existence since 1950, one bowler in the past 25 years, that's saying something. And Jason Belmonte, for those who did not know, as well as myself, I'm a two-handed bowler, and for bowling purists, they might hate that. But it's a new style that has taken over the sport, and you see it a lot more. Jason Belmonte was kind of the guy who started all that, right? He was the first two-handed bowler to get that recognition, and it's cool. He's the one I modeled my game after. But I'm so excited for this game season to get underway. I'm excited to cover it, excited to have fun with it, and excited to cover it with you, Matt, because you don't know much about bowling, but I don't know much about golf, and that seems to be your sport. So we each get to learn this year.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn a little bit more about bowling. I love to go out and do it when I can recreationally, and I'm definitely probably not as good as you with it. I can't put the spin on it quite like that, but I know I definitely have a little area that I aim at, and if I can hit the pins just right, then that's usually my strategy. But
yeah, fun fact: the lanes they bowled on this weekend. You want to know how old those lanes are?
How old are they?
Remember in bowling, you have on the lanes they'll have the arrows and the dots. These lanes didn't even have that. That's how old these lanes were. These lanes were pre 1940. So I mean, that just tells you the fact that these lanes were still operational and they were able to play on them speaks volumes. I mean, they had to manually write the scores. I mean, that's how old all this was. And
that's pretty impressive.
It was awesome to see this. But when we get back from it, we're going to take a quick break here for a little bit. But Matt, when we get back, we're going to kind of revert back to the Super Bowl a little bit because you have some things you want to talk about. You want to kind of tease them a little bit?
Definitely, yeah. So when we come back, we're going to be talking, was this Super Bowl just a fluke for Drake Maye, or is this a sign of things to come for him? Andrew and I will break down what this flop of a Super Bowl performance could mean for the Patriots star quarterback going forward.
And welcome back in, everyone, to this edition of Coffee and Sports. I'm one of your hosts, Andrew Schott, and with me always is Matt Donnelly over on the board. And before we went to break, he was kind of teasing us about we're going to revert back to the Super Bowl, and you wanted to talk about some things about if this was just a fluke for Drake May. What did you mean by that, Matt?
Yeah, so when we take a look at Drake May here, his performance in the Super Bowl wasn't great. Obviously, when we're looking at that alone, not the best. However, he had a very solid season. We can see a lot of improvement from year one from him. He played 4 more games in year 2 than he did year 1. He threw for 2,000 more yards. He had a much better touchdown interception ratio. All of these things are fantastic and good, but when it comes down to the biggest moment here, he ends up, having a pretty lackluster performance. We see the 2 interceptions, the lost fumble, sacked 6 times. Not great stuff here. But all of that to say, I don't think this is necessarily a one-off year, even though the Patriots had the worst strength of schedule in all of the NFL. It was a completely terrible schedule that they were able to get through, which a lot of teams were not able to. They call it, what do they call it? The coaching season or the fired coach season, right?
Because we're like a third of the NFL. I was looking for new coaches at one point. It was like half the NFL was just without coaches.
Aside from the Bengals, I believe it was something along the lines of 13 different teams that they played, and of course there's overlap within their division, right? So they're going to play the AFC East twice, but a lot of teams that they played ended up firing their coaches. So not the best strength of schedule by any means there. But when we again look at the performance here, we talked about it in the first segment a little bit. That performance was probably a culmination of a lot of different things, not only the nerves of that situation, but also just general inexperience with playing in the NFL, as well as poor offensive line play that they weren't very familiar with. What do you think, Andrew? Does this Patriots team have what it takes, the pieces in place, especially offensively? Because I think we saw their defense was pretty solid. Do we think offensively they're going to be okay going forward, or is this kind of just a lucky season for them?
Well, here's the way I look at it, Matt, and we can look at it a bunch of different ways. But this Super Bowl, I looked at that New England team, and it really reminded me of the Bears team we had last year. That offensive line was just not protecting Drake May. So it begs the question to what was going on within that 2-week span of the championship game and the Super Bowl. Were they switching things up too much? Did somebody do something wrong? I'm not exactly sure what happened, because let's not gloss over the fact that New England had to get to the Super Bowl. So your offensive line had to be good at least in spurts somewhere this year, right, to make the Super Bowl, because I don't remember seeing Drake May scramble on every single play this year. So I'm trying to think what happened to that offensive line in that 2-week span between the championship game and the Super Bowl, because to me that's a big factor of why New England lost that game. I feel like if Drake May does not get as many pressures, that game is a little closer and New England competes a little more. Now, I feel like Drake May can get back to here, especially with Mike Vrabel as his coach. And we've seen what Mike Vrabel can do this year. One coach of the year, took New England from a 4-win team to a over 10-win team. But do I think Drake
Nick is very opposed to our discussion here. Nick's saying absolutely no way. I think it's going to be very tough, to say the least. I think they got very fortunate and they made the most of what they could have done this season.
Here's a question. Here's a question I have for you, Matt. I was doing Big Top Sports over WRMN with Derek Iron, and he and I were talking. Apparently, he heard some national news that if Caleb Williams had played for New England in the Super Bowl, that New England would have won the Super Bowl and had a better game. And I start laughing because, they would have had a better game.
I mean,
if Caleb Williams was under
he'd have
center for New England.
He'd have an entire season worth of scrambling abilities there for him to get away from that Seahawks defense for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those when it comes to the Patriots that I think when you look at their scheme that they had this year, they were very fortunate in the fact that both of their running backs not only were very high contributing offensively on the ground, but they were also quite good pass catchers. 500 of Drake May's 4,400 yards approximately came from check downs or short passes to his wide receiver. To his running backs there. And then his main receiver, Stephon Diggs, barely had over 1,000 yards receiving. So I think it was a culmination of a great defense plus just the right pieces working for him offensively. But ultimately, it was a pretty poor performance. And I don't know if this iteration of Drake May makes it back to the Super Bowl anytime soon. But I want to count out Mike Vrabel, and especially if he's got a decent offense. We've seen what he was able to do with Tannehill in Tennessee, as well as Derrick Henry. Neither of those running backs are Derrick Henry, but we'll see what comes from that. Any last thoughts, Andrew?
No, just excited. We've been talking about it, but excited for the MLB season kicking off this week, and other stuff like that. Excited for the PBA season, and it was a good NFL season. Let's not forget that they had a good time. Chicago made the playoffs, which we were not expecting, but it was just great. I want to thank everyone for joining us for this edition of Coffee and Sports. I'm Andrew Scheid. That's Matt Donnelly. On Technical Sport is Nick Johnston. Have a nice night.